What's up, Professor Wergeles here. We're going to do a quick video on setting up our servers. In the other videos, I kind of explain everything in high details. In this video, I'm just going to go through the setup quickly. Okay, so sign into your AWS account. You can either do the console or the educate. Make sure you're the root user. We're going to be using EC2. Okay, we're going to launch an instance. You'll see that I'm in the Ohio region. Ohio or North Virginia will work. You'll want to select a region closest to you. We're using the Ubuntu 18 server. Okay, I'm going to use the T2 micro because it's free tier eligible. I'm going to leave the default settings on this page. On the storage, I'm going to increase the size to 25. Could even go to 30. Make sure delete on termination is selected. In the tags, I'm going to add a name tag. I'm going to call it the 4830, 7830 server. And I'm going to put the semester. You can put 4830 or 7830 server, whatever you'd like to name it. I'm going to open up the firewall. Okay, this is going to be my security group. I'm going to enable HTTP and also HTTPS, memorize the ports, check the details, go ahead and select launch, create a new key pair, give it a name you're going to remember. I usually like to put key pair in the name, and I'm going to put the semester. Let's see, I think I already have a key pair with this name, so I'll just put okay, give it a name, download it, put it in a place you're going to remember. Also store it on Google Cloud. Okay, make sure you store it so you do not lose the key. Okay, I'm going to refresh the page. Once it's done, you'll see it's pending. I can sit here and wait for a few minutes, or I can keep refreshing the page. You notice when I refresh, it's running. Select, go ahead and click connect, run through these commands. I'm going to use terminal on Mac. You can use git bash, PowerShell, PuTTY. There's also a bunch of others. Okay, whatever works best for you. Go to where the key pair file is. You should make a directory for this course. Run the commands, change mod 400, SSH into Ubuntu. Select yes to memorize the fingerprint. I'm on the server. You'll see it change to Ubuntu. Okay, once you're on the server, we're going to go ahead and do a quick update. So sudo apt-get update. We're also going to do a sudo apt-get upgrade. It's going to download some additional packages. Should be good to go. I may run another update real quick just to see what it says. So let's see what happens if I do another update. Looks like it did update maybe a few packages there. Not sure if that's really necessary. Then you can do an LSB_release-A. Okay, you'll see I'm on Ubuntu 18. Now we're going to change into the root user. Okay, you'll see it went from Ubuntu to root. And I'm going to, so I updated the packages. Now I'm going to set the host name. Okay, so if I type host name now, you'll see it's just an IP address. So what I can do is I can do an echo name of the server. So I'm going to call it Professor Wergelies. You can also call it a business name like Streamline into the host name file. So now if I do host name again, let's see, I actually need to go ahead and update the host name variable from etc the host name file. Now if I type host name, you'll see it says Professor Wergelies. If I exit root user, exit Ubuntu, go back to my local SSH back in, you'll see originally it said Ubuntu at some IP address. Now it says Ubuntu at professorwergelies.com. Okay, you should also see if you have this file called default, do an ls, look into the default directory. If you see a file that starts with DHC, you should open it up and then you should comment out the host name. Okay, you should comment out the host name. Once Ubuntu came to 16 and 18, they got rid of that file. I haven't seen it recently, so you can probably skip this step. But if you do an ls here and you see a file that starts with DHC, make sure you open it up and change the host name, comment out the host name in that file. We also need to edit the host file. So I'm going to use VI. You can use nano, whatever you prefer. I'm actually going to delete this here. I need to put the actual IP address. So I'm going to go back to my console. You'll see the DNS and the IP. So I'm going to copy the IP, paste it with Command V. I clicked on I for insert. Now I'm going to type my domain, so professorwergelies.com, and then my host name, which is Professor Wergelies. Okay, so now that I clicked I for insert, I'm going to click escape, WQ for write and quit, or I can do an X, which is the same. And we should be good to go. Okay, we should be good to go. So that's changing the host name. Now, what you should do is go to Namescheap and see if that host name is available. Or you can put a temporary host name there for now, and then when you buy the domain, you can change the host name later. But if you verify the host name exists now, you can set it, and then you won't have to change it later. Either way, that's okay. We can always change that later. Now we're going to set the time zone. So if I do date, you'll see it says Tuesday, September 1st, 1945 UTC. Well, actually, it's 2:45. So I'm going to set the time zone to Central. I'm going to use DPKG. It's a Debian-based system. It's a lightweight, Unix-like computer operating system that is composed of free software. Okay, so I'm going to use DPKG, reconfigure, TZ data, time zone data. Okay, you must be the root, so I can type the same command, or I can switch over to the root user. So I did a sudo there. I'm going to select US and Central. Okay, now if I do date again, you'll see it's now the correct time. Instead of 19, it's actually 14, which based off my system clock is the correct time. Okay, now we're going to add a new limited user. So I'm going to do an add user. I'm going to switch over to the root user. I'm going to do an add user. You probably could have done that on your Ubuntu user, but if you go ahead and switch over to the root, you won't have any permissions errors. So now I'm going to add a user with my own paw print. Okay, so I'm going to add user. Okay, I'm going to say Wergelies N. Okay, you'll see it adds a new user. It's asking for a password. Type a password that you're going to remember. Type in your name. You should at least type in the name. Some of the other information you don't have to type, so just click enter and then select yes. Usually you want to type the name so you know which user is which. And then I'm going to add that user to the sudos group. If I do cat etc group, okay, you'll see I have a new group with my user, but the sudo group, which is the administrator, is only Ubuntu. So what I can do is I can add user Worgelyzen to the sudo group. Do a cat again, come back up, you'll see it was successfully added. Okay, now we want to switch over to that user. So I can do a sudo su. Actually, I don't need to do sudo because I'm in the root. I'm going to su, which is switch user to Worgelyzen, which is my new user I just created. You'll see it's a sudo user. I'm going to make the directory SSH. I'm going to change mod on the directory to 700. It's very important those permissions are the same. Now I'm going to create a new file in the SSH directory called authorized keys with an S. Okay, I'm going to change permission on that file to 600. Okay, if I do an ls-l on SSH, you'll see I made it read and write to the owner for the authorized keys file. If I go back a directory, or sorry, actually cd back into your home directory, just do an ls-l. Actually, it's a hidden directory, so you have to do LA. You'll see it's read write executable, which is the 7 for the .ssh directory. Okay, now I need to go to my local machine. I could exit out, or I can start a new terminal. You want to get used to having a few terminals open. So I'm going to start a new terminal. I need to pull the public key from my private key, which is that PIM file. So CD to where your key pair is. I'm using the up arrow to go through my previous commands. Okay, I actually don't see switching to that directory, so I'll just type it again. CD into AWS instance. You should have a directory as well. If I do an ls, you'll see the PIM file there. So I'm going to do a pwd to make sure I get the path to the current working directory. And I'm going to do an ssh-keygen-y. It's going to ask me for the path. I did a pwd so I can copy and paste it. Okay, and then I do / with the file name. I did an ls so I can copy and paste the file name. That way I don't have to type it and have errors. Click enter. Here's your public key. Copy and paste it. Come back over here to the server. Do a vi or nano into authorized keys. Type your password, your pseudo password. Click on I for insert, paste, escape, :X for write and quit. Okay, I'm putting the public key there. So when I SSH with that PIM file to my new user account, it's going to check the public key. If the private key and public key match, then it's going to let me log in. Okay, so I put the public key onto the new user. Okay, the new user. So if I exit, go back to root, exit, go back to Ubuntu, exit, go back to my local machine, I'm going to now SSH into the new user. So instead of Ubuntu, we're going to be using our new user account for the rest of the semester. Okay, you'll see it worked. I get SSH right to my account. So when I do this SSH command, I'm including the PIM file, which is my private key. It gets sent to the server at this IP address. If that public key matches in this user directory, which it did, it'll let me log in. So this private key is similar to like a password, except it's more secure. Okay, except it's more secure. So that worked correctly. Now we're going to disable root logins. Okay, so the first thing is to set the root password. I'm going to delete the old password if there is one. So you do pass wd-l on the root, delete the old password, permission denied. So I can go ahead and switch over to the root. Run it again. Delete the root password. You'll see it change. Although there wasn't a root password, but if there was one, you could delete it. Now I'm going to set the password for the root. It's going to ask for the new password. Go ahead and enter a password. For a production server, you'd want to have a different password than your local. If you do have two different passwords, make sure you write it down. For this class, you can use the same password, but in a production server, you definitely would want to have different passwords. Okay, so I'm going to disable root logins. The first thing is to set a password for the root, and then you need to go into etc, SSH, SSHD config. Open that up. I'm using VI. You can use nano if you scroll down. Okay, you'll see here permit root login on line 32. First, we're going to set it to yes to give it a quick test. Then we're going to come back and set it to no. So I set it to yes. Go ahead and save the file, escape:(x). I'm going to try to log out. And instead of logging into Workily Zen, I'm going to directly try to SSH to root. Okay, it should work because I put yes. But you'll see here, please log in as Ubuntu rather than the user root. So it's actually still blocking me. This is one thing I like about AWS. Even though we didn't add any security features, AWS added some security for us to protect us. A lot of other companies don't do that. AWS is one of the leaders in cloud services, and they add these extra little features that make it easier for the developer to help protect the developer. So log back into your user account, and I'm going to show you where that is. Switch over to the sudo user, and to test the password, you can do su-. Okay, it's going to ask for the root password. And if you type it correctly, you can get in. We're actually going to open up the SSH file in the root user. They have an authorized keys. Every user has an authorized keys, or it should if you want to allow SSHing into that user. So you'll see no port forwarding, no agent forwarding, no X11 forwarding, command echo please log in to your Ubuntu user rather than root. So I'm actually going to delete this so we can test to make sure it works. But it's nice and Amazon added that feature in. So what you can do is actually copy this, test it with me, and then add it back if you prefer. Okay, we're actually going to disable root logins in the configuration file, so you won't be able to log in, but it's nice to have this extra added layer of security. You'll see they also put the key pair file there. Okay, you can leave that there, which is nice because it looks for that exact key pair file name. So the PIN file has to match and the name has to match. That's an extra added layer of security. But all that you need to work is actually just the private key. So I'm going to show you the bare minimums to get this to work. And then you can put it back after we do this test if you prefer. Okay, so now that I take that out, I'm going to exit out. Try to log in again to root. You'll see it works this time. Okay, so that's something that Amazon does that I really like. We're going to go back to the configuration file. If you want to add that back into the authorized keys, you can. Right now, I'm going to open up the configuration file. So it was /etc ssh sshd config. Change permit root login to no. And make sure the password authentication is also equal to no. Okay, you'll see the disabled tunnel clear text passwords change to no here. This is more secure. This will require the public-private key. So if you put no here, that's good. That's more secure. And also make sure permit root login is set to no. They had it commented out before because they put that line in the authorized keys already. But it's still good to change the configuration file. That will make sure, and it will definitely ensure that you cannot allow permit root logins. In fact, it'd be good to have both. Leave that in the authorized keys and put this to no. So I'm going to save, write and quit, and then make sure we go ahead and reset the daemon service. Okay, so I can do a service SSH restart. Okay, so I'm going to restart the SSH daemon service. I'm going to exit out, try to come back into root. You'll see permission denied. Okay, so that configuration file is blocking us. The next thing we're going to set up is fail to ban. Okay, so I'm going to log back into my regular user. I'm going to do a sudo apt get install fail to ban. Okay, type in my sudo password. Select yes, because it's going to take some space. You want to know what failed to ban is. It essentially blocks IP addresses from brute force logins. People can write scripts to try to guess your password, try to guess your public-private key. If they try too many times, failed to ban will block them out. There's a nice article online that talks about how to customize failed to ban. For now, we're going to install it and just run it as the default settings. We also need to update the firewall. So if I do a sudo ufw enable, I'm going to enable the firewall. So I'm going to select yes. If it kicks you out, just go ahead and SSH back in. I can do ufw status. Okay, you'll see it's active, but no ports are open. So if I do a sudo ufw app list, I only have one app available right now, which is open SSH. So if I do a sudo ufw app list open SSH, let's see, actually I should have done app info. Change this to app info, open SSH. You'll see it's port 22 over TCP. So I'm going to do app allow open SSH. Let's see, sorry, it's just allow. So I'll do UFW allow open SSH. It doesn't need to be in quotes, but if it has spaces, it does. It added port 22 to V4 and V6, which is good. So if I do sudo UFW status, you'll see now it's active, but it also has these ports open. There's two firewalls, one coming into the server through the hardware, which is on the AWS console, which is the inbound rules on your security group. Because we have 22, 80, and 443. The other server is going to be on your web server, on the software side, okay, which is going to be our UFW. So right now we have 22. We're also going to add 80 and 443 once we set up our LAMP stack. You can also check ports through netstat. So I do netstat, show all the open ports. You'll see port 22 is open under TCP. Now we're going to set up a LAMP stack. Okay, so the first thing is setting up Ubuntu, which we did, and we set it up in a production-like environment. Now we're going to set up a LAMP stack, which is Apache, so it's Ubuntu, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. You could use different versions of Linux. For 2830, we used Red Hat. For this course, we're going to use Ubuntu. So we're going to do a sudo apt-get. We're going to do install Apache 2. That's your Apache web server for Ubuntu. Select yes. It's going to download some packages. Okay, if I quickly go to the public DNS before that installs, which it looks like it already installed, if I went to this before, you're not going to see anything open up. And actually, you're not going to see anything open up now. If I did it before I installed Apache, it would jump right to the page and say it cannot connect. You'll see now it's circling for a long time. So it's able to connect, but most likely a port is closed. Okay, you'll see skipping, reloading the firewall. You'll see rules updated for profile open SSH. So if I do a sudo UFW app list, you'll see now I have Apache. So if I do a sudo UFW app info Apache, you'll see that's port 80 over TCP. If I do app full, you'll see that's 80 and 443. If I do app secure, Apache secure, that's just 443. So if I do a list again, This is 80, this is 80 and 443, this is just 443. So this is HTTP, this is HTTP and HTTPS, this is just HTTPS, and this is just SSH over port 22. So we'll go ahead and add. Let's see, what command did I do to add? Allow. So I'm going to allow Apache full. Okay, because that's going to match our firewall going into the server, which was 80. So it's 22, 80, and 443. Now on the UFW, which is the firewall to our web server, it's 22, 80, and 443. Okay, so it's the same, which is good. Now if I come back to the page, refresh, go into my public DNS, you'll see I'm able to access the default landing page. So if you try to access the default landing page and immediately within a second or two it tells you it cannot reach the page, more than likely you don't have Apache installed. If you try to go to the public DNS, which is right here on the connect page, so if you go connect, here's your public DNS, so right click it and select go to. If it spins for a long time, it just keeps spinning, most likely that's a port. Either it's a port over here on the AWS console, or it's going to be a port on your UFW. If you want to disable the firewall on the UFW, you just say UFW disable, and it drops all the firewalls. It drops all, so everything's open now. And then if you want to re-enable it later, you just say enable. And if I do a sudo UFW status, you'll see it's back to how it was. Okay, so we set up in Apache. Let's set up MySQL. So I'll do a sudo apt get install MySQL server. In the other video, I explained how Apache and MySQL server are on the same server, but with AWS, you can actually customize and have individual components. So you can have one LAMP stack with several servers, or you can have one Apache server connected to several MySQL servers. You can splice the database. You can do a bunch of techniques, which is why AWS is so powerful. Now, MySQL is installed. If I just do sudo MySQL, I go right into the root user on MySQL. So that's my database. I do a quit. I come back. So what you should do is a sudo MySQL secure installation. Okay, and this is going to ask you like, one, do you want a password? Yes, you should have a password to get into MySQL. I just did sudo MySQL. That's the root user for the database. If somebody hacks in, they have access to all my data. That's not good. And this is just a test for now, so you can do a low or medium password. But definitely if you publish your server, you should have a strong password. So I'm going to select no low for now. Usually it should be a different password than your root and your user. So you should have 3 different passwords here. For now, I'm going to use the same one so it's easy to remember. It says you wish to continue with the password. I'm going to select yes. Remove anonymous users. I'm going to select yes. You should read about what an anonymous user is. Disallow root logins. Definitely yes. That's the most important thing. Remove the test database. I'm going to put no for now. And then you want to reload the privilege tables, you're going to select yes. Go back and read all those. Those are important. For this video, we're doing a quick installation. Okay, now I'm going to set up PHP. So I'll do a sudo apt get install. I'm going to install PHP. I'm going to install lib apache 2 dash mod dash PHP. And I'm going to install PHP dash MySQL. So I'm just going to install PHP. I'm going to install PHP for Apache and also PHP for MySQL. Let's see, did I misspell that? Lib Apache 2, so it looks like I'm missing an A. You'll see if I mess up one command, it messes all of them up. So once I spell that right, I select yes, and now it's going to install all 3. So make sure you have all 3 spelled correctly. Okay, otherwise you can experience some bugs. Wait for it to download. Now you can do a sudo service. sudo service Apache 2 status. Okay, you'll see Apache 2, it's loaded, starting and started, so the server's running. You can also do a sudo system sys tmctl system control status for Apache 2. Says the same thing. Okay, so those are two commands, and then I want to restart Apache 2. Okay, we added a bunch of stuff, so I'm going to do sudo service restart Apache 2. Sudo service Apache 2 restart. Okay, I had that backwards a little bit. Okay, I restarted the server. I come back to the website, do a refresh. You should still be able to get the landing page. Now, this landing page has a lot of important information. You should read about it. Talks where the public HTML directory is. Talks about the document root. Talks about the important configuration files. Make sure you read this before deleting it. Okay, we're actually not going to delete it. We're actually going to rename it. That way we can keep it and read it for later. Okay, so we're going to create a hello world page. We need to go into the public HTML directory. That's var www.html. I type V, hit tab, W, hit tab. Don't be typing anything out. Use shortcuts. So I type H, hit tab, and it types it out for me. If I do an ls, you're going to see that index.html. Now, if I open it up, you'll see it says read only. It's read only, but this is all the HTML and CSS on the page that you can see now. But it's read only. So there's a permission problems here. I'm going to do :q exclamation for force quit. Let's do an ls-l. You'll see the owner is root and the group is root, and the owner only has write access. So you have to be logged in as root to change this file or to even change anything in this directory. So we're going to fix that. Okay, first things first is we're going to add my user, the user that we created your pod print, into the www data group. Okay, so I'm going to do a user mod. I'm going to add to this group. I'm going to do www data and Worgley's in. So I'm going to add Worgley's in to www data. If I do a cat etc group, scroll up, www data didn't have anything before, but it is a common group to use. And now you'll see Worgley's in is in it. So now I'm going to change the ownership. I'm going to change the ownership recursively. I'm going to add Worgley's N, my pod parent, as the owner of the public HTML directory. And I'm going to use the www data as the group. Before it said root and root. Now it's going to say Worgley's N and www data. So if I do an ls-l, okay, you'll see the owner is now me. And then the group right now has read access, which we're also going to fix. We're going to let the group have write access as well. So the first thing is to do a sudo change mod 775 to var www. If I do an ls-l, you'll see it didn't change it for index. If I go back to directory, it didn't change it for the HTML directory either. If I go back to directory, it only changed it for www. Okay, now I have read access to it, or write access to it for the group. And you'll see the group is www data. So what I can do is I can do a find in var www for all the directories. So you do type D. So I'm going to look for all the directories. And then I'm going to execute this command when I find one. I'm going to execute a sudo change mod 775 to all the files that I found from the first command. So I'm going to click enter, cd back into www, do an ls-l, and now you'll see I do have write access. Okay, that's for directories. You should also do it for files. So in the var www directory, I'm going to find all of the types of F, which are to find all the files. I'm going to execute this command, sudo change mod. I'm not going to do 775. I'm going to do 664 on the files for all the files. Okay, for all the files that were found. Now if I do an ls-l, cd into HTML, do an ls-l. You'll see now I have read write for the owner, read write for the group. So that's 664, and then read only for the world, okay, which is exactly what we want. And now instead of get rid of that file, we'll just rename it. To rename it, you do a move. So we'll call this index-old. If I go back and refresh the page, you'll actually load the file system because it's looking for a file called index.html or index.php. It didn't find it, so it shows the directory. That's actually a security issue. So you'll want to create a file called index. Notice I don't have to do sudo because I'm the owner now. And I'm just going to type hello world. You should have a file with the proper 5 required tags, passing the validator. Now if I refresh, you won't be able to see the file system anymore. You'll be able to see hello world. So for each directory in the public HTML folder, you should have a file called index. Maybe it says you're in the wrong spot, or maybe a page loads. That way users cannot access your file system and access all the information on your server. So you definitely want to have an index file in every directory for a production server. Okay, that's it. That's setting up production server in a quick way without much explanation. If you need more explanation, go to the other video. You'll need to set up a proper HTML5 page, passing the validator. Once you do this, you should be good for the current challenge. That's it for this video. We'll see you next time.